Michael Bidwill's in the news again. Not for anything good. This is overdue. Let's discuss.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Alex Clancy here. Follow me on Twitter, Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen. Free wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Been in sports media in Phoenix since 2011. Finishing up my 8th season hosting this podcast. Just unbelievable ride. And you get reminded sometimes of what an uphill battle it is regarding the Arizona Cardinals just as an entity with the last name Bidwill running the show. This morning was just another reminder of that. We'll unpack it. What does it mean? Can the Cardinals win in spite of Michael Bidwill, or am I just a hamster on a wheel? And finally, with the Super Bowl on Sunday, just things to watch. I think it's always fun and just different watching other teams play and comparing that to what the Cardinals should do better, or what the Cardinals do better than other teams, because contrary to popular belief, the Cardinals do have some strengths that, they do some things better than other teams do. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. So it came out early this morning. This is from Daniel Wallach, who is a sports wagering attorney on Twitter. The tweet reads, breaking: Arizona Cardinals owner Michael Bidwill has been sued for workplace discrimination by his former personal assistant, and parentheses, a single mother and decorated Navy veteran, who alleges that she was continuously tormented and unmercifully harassed in an effort to drive her out. On top of the Sean McDonough lawsuit that's ongoing, on top of the reports of workplace, whether it be alleged, bigotry, harassment, just terrible treatment of employees, all the way down to making, the NFL players pay for their meals. Michael Bidwill, by all accounts, people that I've talked to who have worked there in some form or fashion, whether it be players or front or whatever it is, or reports. Obviously, this is all alleged because I have not firsthand experienced this. It's not great. And it's something that won't go away. These conversations are still going to be had naturally as people are looking for vindication, whether it be through financials or just restitution, moral restitution. It's not a great thing, and that's obvious. Every day, as you know this, if this is your first listen to Locked On Cardinals, first off, thank you. Second of all, I keep the majority of what I talk about, 99%, to the game of football and the Arizona Cardinals. The outside stuff, and that's not demeaning what happens outside of football by any stretch. But the things that don't happen in the locker room, between the lines, on whether it be practice or during a game, I usually don't touch it most of the time. Well, most of it is because I'm not I don't have a law degree. I'm not an ethics lawyer. I'm not a workplace malpractice lawyer. That's just not, it's not what I do. So I would not be, a credible source talking about it. All I'm doing today is giving out factual information that's come out in court proceedings, or lawsuits filed against, suing, whatever it is, alleged actions, behavior that is unbecoming and a terrible way to run any sort of business. On top of that, there was another report that came out. I'm not sure if it was yesterday or today, where Michael Bidwill went on a tirade after the Rams owner, Stan Kroenke, was sitting in the suite next to Michael Bidwill's when the Rams came and played their playoff game here because of the LA fires, that Stan Kroenke didn't go over and personally thank Michael Bidwill for letting them play the game there. And he apparently went nuts. Michael Bidwill is portrayed as a petulant, spoiled brat, where if he doesn't get his way, he acts like a child. There's another report out. I think it was in the same lawsuit filed by his former personal assistant, I believe. Kyle Odegaard tweeted this out. He used to write for the Cardinals, and a dear friend of mine, one of the more respected people in the space. He on Twitter screenshot and tweeted out a little blurb about how the CFO, I believe, CFO or CMO, was fired for hiring a transgendered woman. By Michael Bidwill. He was not happy about that. Again, these are alleged. This is what the filing says. So I say all of this to first say none of that is okay. I think that's pretty obvious. Number two, I've done you a disservice by not necessarily talking about this specifically more, but bringing Michael Bidwill into the fold as part of the conversation as to why things aren't working. And naturally, longtime Cardinals fans always have known that forever. It's pretty obvious. He's like the overlord in his ivory tower. Like, you knew when he and Steve Keim were watching game film with Cliff Kingsbury, it's like, is this the movie Idiocracy? Like, what are we doing here, guys? Do you not know your left foot from your right? What's going on here? I've done you a disservice by not discussing it more. I just struggle with, and leave it in the comments if you want me to fold Michael Bidwill in more. I find that talking about an immovable force that will not go away as part of the problem as kind of a fool's errand, because it's not going to change. Now, while that may seem backwards a little bit, it's just an uncomfortable truth that Michael Bidwill ain't selling this team. And while if morals spoke, it would be enough for the NFL to force him to sell his team. But it hasn't reached Dan Snyder level, so he won't. He won't be forced to. He was then enshrined into the Arizona Sports Hall of Fame. It's like, what are we doing here? What has he done? And the reasoning for it was that part of it was bringing mega events to Arizona. Oh, so you got popped into the Arizona Sports Hall of Fame by putting on events that have nothing to do with the team that you own. Because you are usually too much of a miser and stingy to pay what's necessary for this team to thrive and go to the next level. Interesting. So I've done you a disservice. I just don't know, like, what conversations can be had about him where it's like, okay, this is constructive. It's like, all right, he's not, like, literally, he is not going anywhere. He will never sell this team. This is like if the Lakers let Jim Buss still run the show. It's a clown car. And this one has harassment, verbal, sexual harassment, racial harassment, gender harassment. But what can be done? That's why I, more times than not, will stick to the game. We can talk about the game. We can talk about the team. We can talk about what should happen and hopefully what will happen in spite of, not because of. And the one thing I will give him credit for, as we're pivoting back to just football, since firing Cliff Kingsbury and Steve Keim, he's done everything he said he was going to do. Does that erase the past? Of course not. Does that overshadow how poorly he treats his employees in the past and seemingly more recently? Of course not. That's always more important when you have somebody who's leading the show that acts like that, like a petulant child when he doesn't get his way. With all that said, this is a football podcast, and we're going to discuss if the Cardinals can win with him as the owner and why I think they can. Next, Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by our friends over at BetterHelp. What are some of your relationship green flags? We often hear about the red flags we should avoid, but what if we focus more on identifying the positive signs in our relationships, those green flags? If you're not sure what they look like, therapy can help you identify them. Actively practice them, and even embody those green flag energies for yourself. Whether you're dating, married, building a friendship, or just working on yourself, therapy can help you form relationships that love you back. BetterHelp makes it easy by offering online therapy with over 30,000 licensed therapists to choose from. And if you need to switch therapists, you can do so at no extra cost. Deliver your relationship green flags at BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/locked on. So, it's something that it's an immovable force when it comes to football. He owns the team. He signs the checks. He's not going anywhere. Can the Cardinals win in spite of Michael Bidwill being the owner? And I think the answer is yes. What does win mean? It's funny because over half the NFL has never won a Super Bowl? When I say win, it's kind of one of those things like winning at life where it's like, it's not extravagant, but you just do the good things. Good things happen. It's usually more positive than negative. And you're a model or stencil for how others could lead their lives if they want to be happier than they are. When I say win, can the Cardinals win with Michael Bidwill as the owner? Super Bowls, sure. It's so arbitrary. Like, you draft well, you pay your players, you build a good roster, you have a good quarterback, you have a good coach, you win. Like, the big differentiation, and I think this is obvious, between Michael Bidwill and other teams, Eagles, Ravens, is spending the big dollars on free agents. And Michael Bidwill is not one of the more wealthy owners in the league. But as I alluded to a minute ago, like, ever since getting rid of the last regime, he's done everything he said he was going to do. Like, he gave the keys to Monti Ossenfort. He gave the keys to Jonathan Gannon and Nick Rawls and Drew Petzing, and he's kind of just chilled. Remember, and this is something that while it seems small, I saw this as one of the biggest moments of my time in Phoenix, either, in sports media or doing this podcast or whatever it is. Draft night, waiting for Darius Robinson, waiting to pick Darius Robinson at 27, 21, 22, 23. And Monty's like, 4 picks. Okay, 4 picks. Michael Bidwill goes up to him. He goes, what are you thinking? What are you thinking? It's obvious that he's taken more of a step back. What I said was he's on the inside looking in, where obviously he's the owner. He's going to be in the inner circle for everything, naturally. But he's still allowing Monti Ossenfort to do his job. That's what good leaders do. And I'm, first segment, naturally not the best leader, it seems, allegedly, by many different sources for many different reasons. In a football sense, or in any sort of, business sense, a good leader hires the right people and lets them do the hell out of their job without interfering. And I believe since hiring the new regime, he's done what he said he was going to do. The next year is going to be very telling. It's going to be very telling. This offseason is going to be very telling. The Cardinals have never really gone all in. They paid Carson Palmer. They got him out of pseudo retirement. They gave Larry Fitzgerald all the money for the entirety of the time he was here. They paid Patrick Peterson a lot. They paid but they haven't said, you know what? Go get the 2 top pass rushers. Why not? Go trade for Max Crosby and go sign a pass rusher. Spend every dollar. Move things around, restructure to spend more. That's the 0-1 that doesn't happen here. And that's of course, very, very solid reason as to why the Cardinals aren't more relevant than they are. But can the Cardinals win with Michael Bidwill as the owner? Yeah. It's just going to be so reliant upon Monti Ossenfort just not making mistakes. Isn't that crazy? There's no margin for error when you have much less to spend than everybody. So it's good that Monti Ossenfort can, knows how to, for lack of a better phrase, penny pinch, knows to stretch a dollar. Didn't look great that he gave Bilal Nichols and Justin Jones and Sean Murphy-Bunting all that money. I don't think it really matters. It really doesn't matter because the Cardinals weren't in contention anyway. So, starting this year, it's going to be fascinating to see what this roster looks like. Is Jalen Thompson going to be back? Are they just going to draft a pass rusher at 16 and sign an offensive lineman? What is it going to be that Monti Ossenfort molds this roster that's ready to pop into so that said pop will go on as scheduled week 1 of 2025? So at this point, Michael Bidwill is kind of irrelevant to the growth of this team because when he was the most relevant during that fever pitch, during that tipping point, he made the right move, albeit 5 years too late for Steve Keim and 5 years too late for Cliff Kingsbury. He made the right move. He hired competent people. Back the hell off. Now, of course, we can get into the conversation about Kyler Murray, get into the conversation about all of it. I get all that. But Michael Bidwill is not Jerry Jones. He thinks he is sometimes. I used to joke, and every day, you'll know this if you've been around for a while, I have said that Michael Bidwill runs the Arizona Cardinals like they've won 10 Super Bowls. Don't worry, guys. I know it seems weird. We've done this before. Let's run it back. No. He runs it like he's the Cowboys, but like a knockoff version of it. And Arthur Blank gets a lot of crap in Atlanta, but Arthur Blank's one of the most philanthropic guys on the planet. So you can't compare him. He just loves his team with the Falcons. I mean, you remember the still of him with his hands on his hips after they gave him a 28-3 lead to the Patriots in the Super Bowl. But he's one of the most philanthropic dudes on the planet. So can't really compare him to Michael Bidwill. I just see a path where Michael Bidwill doesn't matter. And that path could very quickly have overgrown shrubbery and ivy covering it, and it's just removed from existence very quickly. 2025 will tell the tale. This is when you do everything. I don't use the phrase go all in a lot. This is when you throw everything into the fire. Everything. Every dollar. You go sign the most talent you can. You trade for talent if you need to. You draft players who are ready to rock right away. And you go be to the wall. And you go try and come out on top of the NFC West, make the playoffs, make a playoff run. Because if they don't this year, barring any sort of injury, but irrespective of that, if Kyler Murray gets injured, they're going to trade him. This is it. This is the end. This is either the beginning of the end or the end of the beginning. Michael Bidwill will never take blame for doing anything with this team. And luckily, Monti Ossenfort is equipped to usher in this new regimented culture, strong cultured, strong foundation iteration of the Cardinals. But if it doesn't happen in 2025, leaps and bounds from this past year, everything's going to change. Everything's going to change. So it doesn't matter if it's Michael Bidwill or not. everything's going to change if they don't really, really move the ball forward this year. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. With that, what are some takeaways that the Cardinals need to watch that maybe you could watch during the Super Bowl that everybody's going to be watching anyways, as pertaining to the Arizona Cardinals and how they should construct their roster moving forward, how they should highlight players moving forward, etc. I'll discuss it next. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action with live betting all game long. You can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. Download the app today and head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. Today's episode of Locked On Cardinals is also brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks. The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to make it even more exciting than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded, Prize Pick makes it fun and simple to get in on the action. Here's how it works. You pick more or less on at least two players' projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. Prize Picks even has a free pick for the big game, whether Patrick Mahomes only needs to throw 1 yard to win. Pair that with one more correct pick, and you're cashing out. Check out the promos. There's a tab for it to tail any of the Super Bowl Millie winners' big game lineups. If you tail a lineup that goes 3 for 3, you can win a split of $1 million in promo funds. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Super Bowl 59. Yeah. It's going to be cool. What to watch for? This first one is self-serving. I'm going to be selfish on a Friday for like 2.5 minutes. 2 minutes? Maybe I'll cut it to just 2 minutes. Watch how good Philly's offensive line is. This defense of the Chiefs is no bleeping joke. Steve Spagnuolo's got those guys primed and ready to rock. Chris Jones, etc. And the Philly has the best offensive line, even after losing Jason Kelce to retirement, that consistently a top 3 offensive line for the last, 5 years? More, maybe more. The self-serving part is, this is why I think the Cardinals need to go guard or the best offensive lineman, regardless of position, at 16. Because if you don't protect Kyler Murray, if you don't give Kyler Murray that extra beat because he's not 6'7", if you want to see how Kyler Murray is with an actual full roster, with an actual full defense and actual expectations in the spotlight for 18 weeks next year, you make the offensive line the best he's ever had. And beyond reproach, you'll know if it's him or not for the future. Draft an offensive lineman, because look at the Eagles. Look at that offensive line. Jalen Hurts, I'm sorry. Jalen Hurts is not an elite quarterback. Jalen Hurts is not an above average, very good quarterback. He is a B quarterback that looks like an A because the offensive line is out of this world. It's how it is. That's number one. Watch the offensive line. Watch the offensive line when the Eagles are on the field. It's magic. It's magic. Number two, this is directly pertaining to Nick Rallis. Watch the Chiefs' defense, okay? It doesn't matter what their base defense is. Everybody will blitz. They put the best players on the field, regardless of position. They've got safeties playing backer. They've got a bunch of DBs on there and what's set to be a blitzing down on third down. It doesn't matter. Steve Spagnuolo is an absolute wizard, okay? And Nick Rallis has shown up until this point, he's got a little wizard magic demon in him. We saw it last year when the pass rusher was non-existent from the traditional position of the defensive line and the edge rusher position. They were throwing off-ball linebackers and safeties and DBs behind the line of scrimmage to try and get some sort of semblance of a pass rush and presser and getting the quarterback into the ground. That's Steve Spagnuolo-ish. So watch the Chiefs defense. That's going to be the two immovable forces, the Eagles offensive line versus the Chiefs defense. Because one thing is for certain, if you rattle Jalen Hurts and you make him a scramble to throw quarterback behind the line of scrimmage, that's where you can take advantage of opportunities on the defensive side of the ball. So it's going to be fascinating to see which side of the ball wins that battle. And then finally, this is the one for me. There's one offensive player for both sides that I want to watch, and there's one that's kind of sneaky. It's going to look like outside the box a little bit, but it's not. And then there's Saquon Barkley. So let's start with Saquon Barkley, the obvious one. Everybody knows he's getting the ball. Everybody knows if he doesn't see it inside, he is going to LaDainian Tomlinson jump step outside, try to hit the corner, and go. Once he sees a hole, he's gone. You think a linebacker is going to catch up to him? If a safety does, he squats, like 2,000 pounds? He will throw a safety off of him and continue. He sees a hole, he's gone. Why is that? Because the offensive line is so good. Because the offensive line coach is so good. You see a right guard pull on an off tackle left where he hits the second level. He hits a backer the second level, opens up that hole. Saquon's gone. That's James Conner. That's why the offensive line is so important. I'm not comparing James Conner to Saquon Barkley at all. Not one iota. But if the Cardinals are going to run the ball and run the ball effectively, and that's going to be their calling card, or at least the setup to unlock the pass game, it's got to look like that. And it starts with the offensive line. So that's an addition to my first point with the Eagles offensive line. And secondarily, this is the fun one because the Cardinals don't use this player unless it's in the preseason or until they're out of contention every year. Watch how the Chiefs use Xavier Worthy and watch how the Cardinals should use Greg Dortch. Now, again, Xavier Worthy, I think he had the fastest 40 time in the history of the combine, 4.2 or whatever it was. They find ways to get him involved. The one thing I do miss about Cliff, truly, is how they tried to get Andy Isabella involved around the line of scrimmage. Sure, it was a lot of jet sweeps and reverse handoffs on third and short inside the 10, like dumb placement time, but they tried to get Andy Isabella involved. Getting Greg Dortch involved around the line of scrimmage where he can catch, compose, and burst is something that the Chiefs are so good at with Xavier Worthy. They throw the ball down the field to him also. They just find ways to get him involved because he's that spark. He's that, oh man, he's fast, he's gone guy that is massive. It was a shift for them from Tyreek where it's like, throw the ball, Tyreek's down there somewhere. I don't care that he's 5'7" or whatever he is, 5'10". Doesn't matter. He's down there somewhere. He's going to outrun whoever catches the ball, whoever he's around. Xavier Worthy, while faster. Greg Dortch is I keep saying he and Michael Wilson are the two most underutilized players on this team. Doesn't matter, offense or defense. Look at how they use Xavier Worthy. It's a perfect blueprint moving forward for Greg Dortch. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. Enjoy the Super Bowl. I'll talk to you Monday. Remember, without you, there is no me. I'll talk to you then.